This is another podcast, another week, and we're going to be talking about some movies that we saw, some TV shows, maybe talk about some movie news, some box office performance. I feel like it's like a through line in this day and age that we live in. It's like, especially because of the Shang-Chi of it all and the news recently about Iger's comments about the release. And, I think we should probably start the podcast because it is a big news item, talking a little bit about how Shang-Chi did in its release this past weekend. It had the long Labor Day 4-day weekend. And I don't know, who wants to tell our listeners about how Shang-Chi did?
RJ?
It did really well. 70. It's like
there you
70,
go. We're done. We covered
That's it. We're covered. End of conversation.
75 million on between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is incredible. And I have to say something. I want to asterisk beside kind of the conversation we're having. I wasn't saying it, that I thought that things were going to fail because of the quality of the film. And I don't think this is any indication that this is the box office is back. And, every movie that is of quality will receive this sort of number.
Right.
But
I wonder.
You wonder?
I think this was I don't think a Marvel movie that represents a first for all kinds of representationists. I mean, I feel like that's not a clean test case for what's going to perform at the box office. I don't think that number would have been as high if this weren't Marvel and if this wasn't a movie that people were like, let's get out and support this movie. Right. If we're going to support any movie right now, and I know that was my thinking when I took my family to see it just a couple of days ago. So Shang-Chi rocks, and that number definitely reflects, I think, an audience response that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, after hearing that number and then going to see it, I was definitely like, okay, this is like one of those good Marvel movies. This has that Black Panther-y kind of feeling of they've opened up a whole, I mean, I'm not for the obvious comparison. I just mean like it's a new storyline that's like almost like a different kind of fantasy film. And I just think this is a movie that audiences will latch onto, and it's a shame that it's coming out in this strange way, but I do think that number reflects like there's both legitimate curiosity about this movie, and I think like the word is just going to be strong about this one. It's hard to picture the person who goes to see this and has a bad time. Some people might not think it's great. Some people might, there's some clunky moments of exposition or whatever because they have to set up a lot, but in general, this is one of those winners for Marvel.
There's some like combo news in this too, man. After the reception of this movie, Sony made a move that surprised the shit out of me. They moved Venom Let There Be Carnage from the 15th of October to the 1st of October. So I guess they're trying to get some of that juju, some of that spillage of juju from the reception of Shang-Chi. I don't know about
I mean, I think for how wrong as it came off, like whatever Bob Iger said, I do think that the Shang-Chi release in theaters, the exclusive day and without a day and date, just only in theaters, a big comic book movie, blockbuster filmmaking, all that good stuff. I do think it is a litmus test in some ways for studios that are deciding whether or not they think they can release their movie still this year. And, movies like Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, movies like Bond, Bond even came out and they kind of solidified that it is opening October 8th. Like, it's not moving, so this movie performing so well and, hitting all these things that, like Ron and John have been talking about, it's like biggest 3-day opening over Labor Day, biggest 4-day Labor Day opening, fastest movie of the pandemic era to hit 100 million. It did it in 5 days. It's already passed it. There's a lot of metrics that this movie is setting that is inspiring to the theatrical exhibition industry. So like these studios that have been kind of hanging on to these movies, like I'm saying, it is just a feather in their cap to say, you know what, like we can probably try to go for this and make this work. And I don't know that I kind of agree with what Rana was saying maybe a little earlier about like, I don't know that these movies are going to perform to this level because this film inherits a lot from, the MCU and the legacy of those movies and the fan base that it's built, not to mention what Disney Plus has been doing for their shows to kind of keep Marvel on people's minds at all times. But, I do think that, a movie like Venom 2 or Bond, like, I think it's just reassuring to them that it is possible to hit and go past that 30 million mark that we've been talking about on this podcast a lot recently.
Yeah.
Because, a movie like Candyman still does well, exceeds expectations. The drop for a second week for that was pretty good last weekend, even against a movie like Shang-Chi, which is competing audiences, competing demos. I think it dropped right around 50%, which is pretty good for a horror movie in the second week, especially compared to some other ones that have come out here during the pandemic. But, I just think it's a huge win, like, for everybody involved, with specifically Shang-Chi. Like, regardless of what the theatrical looks like, regardless of what Sony or MGM or whoever is benefiting from this vote of confidence, I just, like, I'm just so happy to see, all the filmmakers, the cast, the crew, Marvel, like whoever is involved with this movie, they went through a lot to get this movie out. This movie kind of shut down during production during the pandemic, finished it, it's bounced around a bit, and it's gotten all this publicity about the comments that Iger made. And I love how its star has kind of like taken offense to it and really kind of fired up people to, like John said, to support something, and it should be this right now. Yeah. And, it's just really great to see everybody in a lot of ways rallying around it. The other thing I saw, which is amazing and in line with what John said, because I haven't seen it yet, but it's like the highest scored audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes of any of the MCU movies.
Yeah.
Like insane. A cinema score, crazy good critic score. People seem to be loving this movie. And we've all just been like so excited to see it, outperform everything. And it's just so good to see it do that. And I
mean, it is the trailer. I mean, if you see the trailer and you think, well, that looks good. Good news. There's a movie that feels like that trailer and then some. Right. There's fantastic action in it. There's a couple. This is going to sound strange, but just the cinematic feeling. Like, I got goosebumps when the Marvel fanfare started up. Like, when In the Dark, the trailers that were playing before it were trailers I'd seen before, so nothing really knocked my socks off. But I did notice that they're pushing the Eternals. They didn't have like a Spider-Man trailer attached. So I was back to our point of a couple weeks ago. I really think they dropped that Spider-Man trailer to get it out of the way and to get the sort of speculation, changing into hype mode for that movie. Yeah. And then leave it there, because I haven't seen much of a peep about that movie since they dropped the trailer. And I really think Shang-Chi has been getting, every day I see some new headline about something like Feige said about how bullish he is on this movie. And it feels bullish. Like, this movie feels like, you used the word confidence about like something a minute ago, Steve, related to this, but this movie itself has a confidence to it. It has a swagger to it. This is like, it might be the best structured of the kind of origin stories, because it puts you in a story where you're moving forward and you're getting flashbacks. So you're finding out about this world and all these characters, but it just works on its own to the extent that you realize, like, oh, wow, if this didn't have the Marvel connection, this is like a whole new fantasy realm. I mean, it reminded me in ways of Black Panther, but also like Lord of the Rings and that kind of thing, where it's got this huge mythos and this huge backdrop to it, and these characters are larger than life, and the evil that they're fighting is something ancient. And how it connects to the MCU, the way they do that part, the way they get you excited for that at the end, is really just like, okay, wow, they did it. They created something new, and they looped it into what we love, and now I'm totally like down with, just like when they do one of these movies, what's the first thing you think is like, oh, I'm down to see him pop up and bounce off of some of these other characters that we love. And the supporting cast is fantastic too. Awkwafina comes off great. Michelle Yeoh has some great stuff to do. I don't know the actress that plays, there's another character that's really prominent in this. I think that from the moment I heard that fanfare, I felt like, oh, this feels kind of good to be sitting here watching a Marvel movie, to the moment there's a bit of hand-to-hand combat at one point that's just shot really well and keep fast cuts, and it keeps cutting, and you can tell it's actual, at least stuntmen, if not the actors doing it. Right. And I got choked up. I was like, I don't think I've ever gotten choked up at like fight choreography before. Oh, so it was some combination of like oh, this is just that movie magic. And it felt so good to be sitting there in a dark room and seeing it giant and hearing it loud. And it has all the usual Marvel movie touches that some people might like, the style and the kind of housey, that kind of slightly gray look that everything, it's got those little elements to it that make you feel like, oh, if someone doesn't like a Marvel movie, they might not be convinced by this. But this really did feel kind of special to that way that when you're leaving, you're just kind of, I don't know, we just felt good. It was like, it did feel like, okay, I can totally see how, audiences would respond well to this. And I hope it got some bump out of that weekend. But I also think we can expect a lot of movies to do well the first week in this climate, and then we'll see how much staying power we have. But this is the kind of movie that feels like it would have staying power, just because it's one of those, like I said, a very, very confident Marvel movie. And when you guys have seen it, we can talk about all the little things that are imperfect about it, or moments that we like. But as far as just, does this work? We've had that question of how are they going to do that? How are they going to introduce a new character, a new world, and make it feel right? This is that kind of, whatever excitement we felt like we were lacking from Black Widow or something. This kind of restores that feeling of like, okay, this is a Marvel movie that's kind of firing on all cylinders again.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool, man.
It feels like a step forward. It feels like new, set in the aftermath of what we know. It's not really throwing back to anything. Like, it really resists all the connections that you usually get, which feel almost like hedging their bets.
Right.
It saves those moments when it mentions stuff that we know from before. So
cool.
I really enjoyed it.
Nice. I can't wait to see it.
Can't wait.
Oh boy. And the good thing about that movie is that, like, it's got a bit of a runway right now, because, like, Ronald mentioning that Venom coming out, that, what is it? It's the 1st of October.
Yeah.
I mean, it has almost a month of, like, kind of runway for any true competition.
Yeah.
So we'll really see what kind of legs it has and the kind of multiplier that it has going into the upcoming weekends. But yeah, man, can't wait to see it. All right.